The audience response at first was tentative on the part of the audience. As the comedy routine progressed, they got into the spirit of the performance. By the time we finished the second song and Tony left, they really got into it. The response to my solo number was larger than I first thought. I watched myself wade through the crowd signing autographs and shaking hands. I realized it took almost 3 minutes to get back to the console. We watched the first hour or so of the concert, then heard a knock on the door. Someone poked their head in and told us we were wanted outside. We found one of the band members waiting for us. Tony, you and Bear have got to hear this. We walked over to a car in the parking lot. The doors were open and the radio was turned up loud and tuned to one of the local FM stations that played Tony's music. And the surprise hit of the concert, according to our listeners that attended this afternoon's performance, is Robert Bear Thompson. He apparently mixes the sound for Tony Baker's concert tour. Mr. Thompson appeared on stage with Tony doing a hilarious takeoff on Sunny and Cher to warm up the crowd. His solo rendition of Thunder Road especially appealed to the audience. We've just learned that Mr. Thompson is indeed a central New York native living in the Syracuse area. If you have any more information about him, please give us a call at the station. Let's listen now to some calls from people that attended the afternoon concert. I listened in shock at the response from some of the comments. Tony worked her way over to my side and looped her arm around one of mine almost as if to steady me on my feet. I was glad she was there because I still couldn't believe all of the positive comments the listeners were making about that particular part of the show. And there you have it, folks. Those of you lucky enough to have tickets for tonight's sold-out performance had better be sure to go or you'll miss a real treat. We're still looking for information on the mysterious Mr. Thompson. We're also sending someone over to the Dome to see if we can get an interview with him. If you know anything about him, call me at 702. I was shaking my head in disbelief as Tony and I walked back inside the Dome. As the shock slowly wore off, I found myself propped up on the couch in Tony's room under the stage. When my eyes were capable of focusing again, Tony's face came into view. Welcome back to Earth, Bear. You kinda zoned out on us there for a while. Are you feeling better? Aye. Welcome to my world now, Bear. Looks like you're going on again tonight. Your fans demand it. But you said? I know what I said, but that's all changed now, hasn't it? You're going to have people out there expecting to see you perform tonight. Do you want to disappoint them? Well, no, but Then let's get you some supper. We'll talk about it afterward. Tony helped me get up, then steered me toward a large room that had been pressed into service as a cafeteria for the band and dancers. I saw all of the road crew and television crew there too. Don't worry about them, Bear. I had Tyler make sure that the Dino folks brought loads of food with them. Now sit down here. I'll be right back. Band members started to crowd around me, patting me on the back about the performance. I was still in shock when Tony brought over a plate of food and a large glass of soda. Here you go, Bear, dig in. I looked at the food as my stomach turned somersaults. Tony, I think if I had anything to eat right now that I would be in big trouble later. Let me work on the soda and see how I feel. Over the next 30 minutes, I had some of the soda and barely picked at the food. My stomach had calmed down some, but it did little flip-flops now and then to let me know it was still there. Is that all you're going to have for supper, Bear? I'm afraid so, Tony. I think if I had any more, I'd toss it later. I got up, then realized I had at least physically recovered from the shock. My mental state was another matter entirely. I followed Tony back to her room under the stage. So, what are you going to do, Bear? We have around 2 hours until the next show. I'm going to get comfortable on the couch and see if I can calm down some more. Sounds good to me. Want me wake you in about an hour? Sure, Tony. I don't think I'll be able to sleep, though. I closed my eyes and settled down on the couch. The next thing I felt was a hand on my shoulder shaking me. Couldn't sleep, huh? I've been trying to wake you for the last 5 minutes. I got up and stretched my arms and legs. Feeling better now? Yes, quite a bit, but I still have to go on, don't I? Not unless you want at least half the audience to get out the tar and feathers. We sent out someone to check out the folks waiting on the lines. Seems you're the talk of the town. The news has been on almost every radio station in town for the last few hours. I looked toward where the sky should be. Why me, God? What did I do to get into this? Don't worry about it. You'll do fine out there. Tony hugged the stuffing out of me again. I swore I would have to ask her how she did that. The last hour before showtime flew by. I wasn't given much time to even think about what was coming since I had to set up the sound system again for the opening of the show and have the same person as earlier watch the controls again. Since the crowd hadn't seen me on stage, I felt rather anonymous while I was sitting at the console. I realized as I walked back toward the stage after the final checks that my days of being an unknown might be coming to an abrupt end. I met up with Tony at the lift that would carry us up through the stage. We listened again as the announcer did his job and the band started the first beats of the opening song. The act went pretty much as it had earlier in the day, with the audience being uncertain what was going on. By the end of the first song, everyone had figured it out and got into the spirit of the performance. The major difference from our earlier performance came as I started to leave the stage after the Thunder Road number. The audience started to chant "Bear, Bear, Bear." I turned around and grabbed the wireless mic. "Want to hear one more?" The answer was a resounding yes from the audience. As we had agreed on earlier, the band started playing the Smash Mouth version of "I'm a Believer." As I started in on the first chorus, the audience let out a roar, and a few people in the first few rows started pointing at something behind me. I looked back to see that Tony had joined the backup singers. Every time I sang and I saw her face, the large screen projection systems had a shot of Tony with the backup singers. I played off that and pulled Tony out of the background to come with me at the front of the stage. She stayed beside me and danced as I sang. I handed the wireless microphone to Tony as the song finished. "Give a big round of applause for Robert, Bear, Thompson, and thank you for letting us have some extra fun to get the show started." I held Tony's hand as we both bowed to the audience and waved. I walked down the stairs at the edge of the stage to head back to the mixing console. I was engulfed by a large crowd looking for autographs until I was rescued by several security people. We made it back to the console where I relieved the crew person that had served as my substitute. I noticed that 2 of the security staff remained with me at the console. I waved to Tony and the band that I was in place. At my signal, the band started the normal portion of the show. I didn't think it was possible, but over the next 2 hours, Tony and the band easily blew away their Chicago performance. I knew as the last notes of the third encore reverberated away that this would be the show that made it onto CDs for release. The crowd slowly left the dome, a few stopping by the console area to ask for autographs or to comment on my performance under the supervision of the security staff. The comments were mostly positive. A few dissenters wondered if I had paid off someone to get on stage. Since they were in the minority by a huge amount, I tossed their comments aside. The last of the crowd was gone as I asked the fellow who was running the camera position next to me what the TV crew thought of the show. I was told that the director in the truck was floating on air and that the crew in general agreed that the performance was one of the best they had ever taped. He also told me that the VHS tapes that Tyler had requested were ready and that we could pick them up in the production truck before we left. I pulled the tank in through the airlock and loaded my recording gear into the back. On my way to find Tony, I passed the word to Tyler that the videotapes were ready. Tony was in her room packing a small bag. "Are you almost ready, Tony?" "Be right with you, Bear. I'm so wound up I don't think I'll be able to get to sleep for a while." "Do you want to get something to eat?" "No, Bear, I just want to go home." "Well, I'm ready to get out of here." She grabbed the bag and her purse, then followed me to the tank. We passed through the airlock, then I pointed the tank south toward home. I couldn't wake Tony from the sleep she had dropped into on the trip home. I carried her into her room and gently placed the sleeping teen on the bed. I left, pulling the door closed behind me. It wasn't very long until I had changed into my pajamas, crawled into my own bed, and joined Tony in dreamland. I woke once again to a mane of red hair blocking my vision. I moved the hair out of my face to find Tony snuggled up behind me. I felt an arm draped over my middle. I sighed, then, noting it was Sunday, decided to go back to sleep. The next time I woke up, the bed behind me was empty and the smell of French toast, eggs, and hash browns filled the bedroom. Tony yelled from the kitchen. "Come on, Bear, time to get up." "Okay, Mom. I'm up already." I headed to the bathroom to do the usual morning ritual. I wound up dressed in another polo shirt and some old cut-off jeans I used as shorts. A pair of well-worn sneakers and clean socks completed the outfit. I took a seat at the kitchen table as Tony put a plate filled with breakfast in front of me. "So, what do you want to drink, Bear?" How about orange juice if we have any? I think we need to make another grocery run today, don't we?" If you want any more milk or eggs or orange juice, along with a few other things, we do need to make a trip. I already talked with Tyler this morning. He'll be here just before lunch with some of the leftovers from the buffet last night. He says we need to make some decisions about the shows too, which one to use as the concert release. I can set up the editors in the studio to hear the recordings from yesterday. Did Tyler get the videotapes from the TV truck? He said he has VHS copies of both shows. The digital masters are still with the production company. We can get copies of them anytime. And we also need to make a decision about you, Bear. I had been stalling as long as I could in making a decision about continuing on to mix shows for Tony. I sighed as I looked at Tony. All right, Tony. I'll make my decision today. Let's get finished with breakfast, then we'll make the grocery run. I looked over at the clock on the counter and realized it was a bit after 9 in the morning. Tony, why did you let me sleep so long? You needed it, Bear, and so did I. Last night's performances took a lot out of me. And me too. Let's get busy though. I think we have a very long afternoon ahead of us. I finished breakfast, then went to unload the tank as Tony finished cleaning the kitchen and getting the dishwasher loaded. She wouldn't let me help. I got tossed out of my own kitchen. I carried the storage cases back down to the studio and unpacked the primary editing system. I plugged the notebook into the in-house network, then transferred the digital audio files from last night to the main workstation PC in the studio. The same audio software and digitizing hardware were installed on it, so I didn't have to tear things apart every time I recorded away from the studio. I started the second concert playing as Andrea followed Tony into the studio. Is that the second show? I nodded as Tony dropped into the chair beside me. Andrea pulled up a chair behind us. I set up the stage feed on speakers in front of us. The feed from the two-room microphones went to a pair of speakers behind us. The announcer finished the introduction as the first notes of "The Beat Goes On" started. Tony was absolutely beaming as the vocal started. We listened through to the start of Tony's solo performance before I turned the system down. I turned to face Tony. Well, if my stuff is as good as this is, I'd say the second Syracuse show is the one. I want to see what the video looks like. If it looks as good as this sounds, we've got a winner here. Now if we could just take out the stuff where I was on stage. Tony cut me off. Not a chance, Bear. You were just as much a part of that show as I was. You should be very proud of what you did on stage last night. You did very well, and the audience really liked your performance. Didn't you hear all of that applause? They were only applauding like that because I was leaving the stage. Then why did they ask for an encore? I didn't have an answer for that one. Let's just go get groceries, shall we? By this time, everyone's forgotten about last night anyway. You're the famous one here, Tony, not me. Are you going in your disguise? I have everything all set. Give me about 15 minutes to change and I'll be ready. She left for her bedroom with Andrea as I shut down the studio equipment. By the time I got the gear powered down and the computer turned off, Tony was waiting for me in the living room. This time she was dressed in a knee-length dress and sandals. Instead of her normal red hair, she wore a short blonde wig. She added a pair of sunglasses and very little makeup. That's a good look, Tony. No one will recognize you. It's not me I'm worried about, Bear. It's you. Me? Why in the world would someone remember me? Stop worrying and let's go. Tony followed me out to the tank. Inside of 20 minutes, we were pulling into the parking lot at the store. I told Tony I would catch up to her, then went to look at some magazines for a little while. As I looked at the magazines, I kept feeling as if someone was watching me. I looked around a couple of times to see nobody near me. When it happened again, I turned around directly into a group of people standing behind me. A small girl stepped forward. Can I get your autograph, please? She handed me a copy of the morning newspaper. The picture took up at least half of the front page and showed a full-face shot of me at the concert last night with a microphone in my hand. The headline read, "Local musician performs with nationally known artist," in type that took up the rest of the page. My heart just melted as I looked down at the pleading look on the girl's face. Of course I'll sign it. I signed the girl's newspaper as more people joined the line, each carrying a copy of the paper. I lost count after somewhere around 20 people. I caught sight of Tony out of the corner of my eye and motioned for her to come over. She giggled, then stuck her tongue out at me as if to say, "I told you so." She left me standing there as she continued her shopping. The line dwindled away, so I took the magazines I wanted to the register. When I got in line, I noticed Tony standing with the cart near the front door. As I placed the magazines on the counter, the girl at the register took out another paper from under the counter and asked me to sign it. I signed the picture and handed the paper back to her. She smiled as she rang up the magazines, and I paid for them. I saw Tony giggling to herself as I took the bag with the magazines from the girl. As I neared Tony, she pulled a paper out of a bag. "Excuse me, could I get your autograph, please?" I took the paper from her. "And who should I make it out to, miss?" "Everyone calls me Tony with an I. I signed the paper to Tony with all my love, Bear, and handed it back to her. She looked at the paper and jumped up and down squealing. I simply shook my head and walked slowly toward the tank. Tony followed a few moments later, giggling. "So now you know what it feels like. Why didn't you come and rescue me back there? You were doing just fine on your own. You didn't need my help. Besides, it was great to stand unrecognized and watch it happen to someone else for a change." Now she completely lost it, giggling again. The look on your face when you saw the crowd behind you is priceless. I wish I had a camera to take a picture. I unloaded the shopping cart into the back of the tank, then shoved the cart into a nearby corral. "Come on, laughing beauty. We need to get back to the house, or did you forget that Tyler was coming over to talk business after lunch?" The giggling quickly subsided. "No, I didn't forget, Bear. This week has been so much fun being with you. I'd like you to travel with me and mix my concerts and have some fun too." "I'm still thinking about it, Tony. Is there anything I can do to help you decide?" "Nothing, Tony, except just keep being yourself. I've seen a lot of film and music stars lose themselves by getting wrapped up in the celebrity culture that gets pushed on them. Whatever happens, please don't fall into that trap, okay?" "I'll try, Bear, I'll really try." Silence ruled for the rest of the trip back to the house. We carried the groceries into the kitchen, then I got booted out again as Tony put everything away. I went back down to the studio and worked with the audio from the concerts. Since I was confident that the second concert would be the one they used, I added a little more processing to the sound to reduce some low-frequency rumble from the fans and enhance the "you are there" feeling of the recording. I burned 3 CDs containing the entire show that I could play on the living room sound system. By the time I was finished, Tyler had arrived. He brought 2 large trays of the leftovers from the buffet last night. Tony was busy making sandwiches on fresh-baked rolls from the store for lunch. "Hi, Tyler. What's up this morning?" He dropped into the chair across from me at the kitchen table. Well, he had a funny look on his face, sort of like he had something he was dying to tell us. "Out with it, Tyler. What's going on now?" The record company execs flew in for the concerts yesterday. I didn't want to tell you or Tony because I knew how upset you both were already. And they loved what they heard. They saw the video this morning too. They want to release the second concert as a live album and use the video as a TV special, subject to Tony's approval, of course. Tony joined us at the table. "That's fantastic, Tyler." She put a platter on the table with several large barbecue beef sandwiches on it. "Let's move into the living room. I made some CDs we can listen to as we eat." "Good idea, Bear." Tony picked up the platter, and we followed her to the living room with our drinks. I put the first CD in the stereo system, then grabbed the remote control. "This is the second show from last night. I mixed it for a surround sound home system like mine. It's pretty average as sound systems go these days. If it sounds good here, it should sound good on most others." I hit the start button as my bottom hit the couch. We finished the sandwiches as the first CD completed. "These were great, Tony. Is there any more for tonight?" "Lots more, Bear. The sound on the show is incredible. If the video is as good as this, then I'm in favor of it." Tyler handed me a VHS tape. I put it in the VCR, then punched a few buttons to take the sound from the VCR and feed it into the stereo system. I brought the 50-inch projection TV online and started the tape. We watched the screen as color bars formed, then stabilized on the screen. We saw a countdown from 10 to 2, then the screen went black. The video faded in with the audio as the announcer started to speak. We watched the entire show from start to finish. As the last notes faded, I hit the stop button on the remote.